Good morning. Hope you're doing well. My name is Jonathan Sharp, and my wife Ashley and I have been members here at the Gathering for 6 to 7 years. And we've got 3 boys, and I serve on the deacon team here at the Gathering. And my wife and I lead a team of missionaries with Cru, used to be Campus Crusade for Christ, or Student Venture, to middle and high school student ministry. So right now we're focused at Hickson High School and Hickson Middle School. And there's been times in my life where I feel like I'm hearing the same message over and over again, but from different places. And I've begun to pick up on this because it's like the Lord's trying to get through to me, and He's using different ways. And I'm like, you know what? I'm hearing this not just from the Scriptures or from a sermon, from a friend, from a song or some event. I'm like, okay, I should start paying attention to what the Lord's trying to say to me. This is coming at me from multiple angles. And this year has presented another one of those opportunities for me to wake up and pay attention. I don't know, I'm just thick-headed or something. Like the Lord's got to bring something to me from a lot of different ways so I can see what He's trying to say to me. So this year, my staff team, we've been going through a really good book called With by Skye Jethani. I'm not going to go into the details of the book, but this was the first thing that started cluing me in to something the Lord's been trying to tell me this year. And as I read it, what I discovered was that there was evidence in this book. It had me pegged. It just showed that there's some fear in my life, probably a lot of fear, because the way he describes our different responses to fear and how we try to control the things we're afraid of, I'm like, he's got me pegged. I'm like, this is me. Shoot. But so what I began to see is, okay, there's some fear in my life. Now, what I didn't experience in that moment was fear itself. What I gave was, there was like just mental assent to the fact that there's probably some fear I need to deal with. And so it wasn't like anything that I was aware of. Like if you're around me, I don't think people would say, oh yeah, Jonathan, he's a scaredy cat. I mean, he's just afraid of a lot of things. It's just all over him, you know. But I find ways to mask it and hide it, as you'll begin to see. So not long after that, after this began, reading this book with our team, we had once a month with Cru, we're given just a day with the Lord, a day to spend with the Lord in His presence, just either reading the Scriptures, praying, practicing different spiritual disciplines. It's been so good for us, and I encourage you, if you've never spent extended time with the Lord, one of the things we talk about in our Loving Our Families by Faith Sunday class, Sunday Bible study, and back here in the back for men, is taking a day with the Lord, at least 4 hours once a month to spend with God, reading the Scriptures, praying, processing through life, what all's going on, what the Lord's calling us to, decisions we need to make. Like, it's just good to have some set-aside, extended amount of time to process with the Lord. So it's something that I was doing in January, and this particular day, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go on a hike. I just need to get outdoors sometimes and be alone with God and my thoughts and not having distractions. It just speaks to me, okay, being outside. So I like the outdoors. I need tangible experiences to get through thoughts into my head. So I knew I was going to go hiking this day, but in the morning, I'm getting stuff ready before my boys get up, having a routine that I get a lot ready for my family in the morning. And I was listening to a book this morning, this particular morning in January, and the author quoted Psalm 32:7. Now, when I hear anything from Psalm 32, my ears perk up, because Psalm 32 is a really important chapter in my life that the Lord used to help me see that He notices me. So, I mean, like, it's made a big impact in my life. That's another story for another day. But mainly verses 1 through 5. So I hear Psalm 37:2, and it just kind of puts a bookmark in my mind as I'm thinking about it. So then I go off, and I'm going to go hiking. It's 28 degrees, but hey, whatever. So I go out into Saudi up Hotwater Road, which I'm pretty sure is there's going up Mowbray Mountain. And the path comes off the road and down into a ravine. And then the creek's running down even lower than the path. It's gorgeous. But so it's freezing, and so there's icicles everywhere. But, you know, hiking, I'm going up and down a lot, so I'm doing okay. But my posture that day was just kind of like, Lord, speak, your servant is listening. What do you have to say to me? I just want to hear from you. And there's something about, like, man, I just think the people that have impacted the world the most are those that hear from God. Like when you hear him speak directly to your soul, like those are the most cherished moments of my life when the Lord would speak to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm game. Let's do this today. And so I'm hiking and I'm trying to direct my thoughts back to the Lord. My head, I just go 100 miles an hour in all these different directions. So it's just constant, bring it back, Jonathan, come on. But as I'm going down and walking down, at one point the path goes back up the hill and then eventually crosses the road. So to get back up, it kind of does one of these winding things. I should do it this way. Yes, it winds back up the hill. And so I'm walking up, and at one point I'm seeing like some different landscape. And there were these big, large black rocks kind of scattered across over this hill with green moss growing on them. And I'm like, those look different. That's cool. And I'm not in a hurry, so I'm just trying to soak everything in. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, boy, I wonder what these are. And so then I take a step out on the rock, and I look down because my foot has just sunken about 6 inches, and I'm confused because I thought I was stepping on a rock. And so now I'm like really like interested, like what is going on here? So I get down, and I feel this, what I thought was a rock, and it's landscaping fabric. And I'm like, that's odd. So I'm looking around, really confused, and I find a hole. And I go and I lift up this torn piece of fabric, and I see a heap of trash underneath the landscaping fabric. And so then it dawns on me. I'm looking across this hillside, and I'm like, this is a dump. Like, somebody saw all this trash, like all this trash was here, and you know what, this is going to be too hard to clean up. Let's just cover it up. And so then I look up, and at the road, which you're not far from the road at that point, there's not just a guardrail to keep cars from going off. There is this large chain link fence going up because this apparently was just the trash spot. Like, this is where you go to throw your trash. And I'd seen like some tires on the hillside. There were some appliances in some spots because that makes sense. But like, it was just a dump. Now, what happened is I'm like, okay, and then I find out I'm actually not on the path anymore. I missed the turn. So I wasn't even supposed to be there. So remember, my posture is, Lord, what do you have to say to me today? So I'm going, is there anything that this is, you need to tell me? Well, my mind goes back to Psalm 32, okay? And I usually have this memorized, but I fumble around if I try. So blessed is the one, verse 1, blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. You'll notice there's a contrast in these verses of the Lord covering our sin and us covering up our sin. So here I'm looking at this trash, and I'm like, okay, Lord, are there some things I'm covering up that we need to talk through? And there had been some stuff he had put on my mind that for the rest of the hike, it was just a time of uncovering a certain week in my life that was like 12 years ago, anyway, so I was confessing some things as the Lord reminded me of what all happened in this week. And it was just a good time for me to experience the Lord. Like, my favorite verse in the scriptures is 1 John 1:9, where he says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And when I wrestled with the Lord over this verse, I kind of went, it's too easy. Like, surely, just confess, like not confess and read my Bible more, not confess and pray more, not confess and give everything I have to the poor, not even confess and ask for forgiveness. Just confess, and he'll forgive me. He's faithful to do it, and he's legally right to do it. And I would just have times where I would go, Lord, no, like I deserve to be punished. And that's when I hear the Lord say, Jonathan, was my son not punished enough? Like, you are cleansed, you are forgiven. And so for this hike, it was just the Lord let me experience his love and forgiveness. And as I get to the end of the hike, my mind goes back, oh yeah, what about verse 7? Psalm 32:7, that's what I heard this morning. And I open it up, and it says, you are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with shouts of deliverance. Some versions say with songs of deliverance. And so that day, again, I just had this sense this verse was going to be important to me. That moment, it didn't mean a lot, but it's just like cementing this bookmark in my mind. So it was a few weeks later, Ashley and I were attending kind of a mini retreat, and we were learning about silence and solitude before the Lord. Just be still and know that I am God. Yeah, I know y'all talked about it in youth. We did not plan that, okay? So we're learning about this, and I know this is going to be good for me. I'm like, because my mind goes 100 miles an hour. I need to learn to be still. It's important. And in this, we were going to have some time where we were going to actually practice being still before the Lord. And there was a couple illustrations they gave, because when you're still before the Lord, there's some things that tend to happen. Like if your mind can really focus on Him, like some of the deepest parts of your soul can come out at that point. Like if you can be still before the Lord, like you get exposed a little bit more as your mind's focused on Him. You know, I think about Isaiah and Isaiah chapter 6 when he sees the Lord in this temple and he says, "Woe is me. I am a man of unclean lips." So as you focus on the Lord and you're still before Him and you see Him in His glory and holiness, like it's exposing, okay? So one of the illustrations they gave was a jar of river water, which I should probably have a larger jar, but this is what I'm working with here, okay? So you can see a little bit. Where's the light going to hit it? Okay, it's a little bit clear, but most of life kind of takes our soul and just shakes it up a good bit. And maybe you're seeing the sediment in here. It's sinking pretty quickly now. But all right, so it gets there's a little bit more dirt in there than you first noticed. So as we take time to just be still before the Lord, like things begin to settle and it gets a little bit more clear. And you can see a little bit. There's some rest. And then another example was like relating our soul to like a skittish animal or skittish wildlife. So if you were going to go into the woods and you wanted to see some wildlife, you wouldn't announce your arrival. Like, "Hey, deer, birds, come on out to play. Raccoons, I want to see you. Come on out." Like, they're gone. All right, you're not going to have any chance to see them out there. And so I'm trying to let my kids know, like, you have to be quiet. You're not going to see anything. Anyway, they're gone. So in the same way, like our soul's a little bit skittish. Like there's got to be some stillness. If you want to see wildlife, you got to go in, you got to find a spot where you're not seen, and you got to be still, and you got to be quiet, and it's probably going to take some time. Just like it's going to take some time for the sediment to settle in the water. So I knew I was going to have some time to practice this that day. We're going to have like 45 minutes, and I'm looking outside, and I see this tall tree in the distance, and I'm like, I'm going to climb that tree because I need to be outside. I don't know. But as I'm hearing about like the skittishness, like being afraid, like it just reminded me of Psalm 32:7. "You are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance." So it's on my mind again. So I go out, and it's still cold that day, but I don't care. I'm like, I'm going to go walk to this tree. So I'm walking up in this area, and then I realize, oh, this tree's in somebody's yard. Probably shouldn't climb that tree. And then I'm looking at it, and it's like, I probably couldn't climb that tree. I want to get home to my kids. So I walk around, but I come, there's a parking lot and a field, and just in this small field, there's a magnolia tree. And I'm like, perfect. All right. So I go climb a magnolia tree. Why not? And get about halfway up in this thing, and they're pretty dense trees. So I'm sitting against the base of the tree, and I can hear the wind blowing, but it's not hitting my face. Like, it's not making me cold. And I can see the leaves moving in the wind, and I can see the branches moving, but I'm not budging. I'm up against the base of the tree. And it was like the Lord was just giving me a tangible experience, because I need that, of a hiding place where I'm protected and I'm safe. And so as I sat there in this tree, and I'm trying to be still before the Lord and quiet, and I have to keep redirecting my mind back to the Lord, thinking about Him. It took a while, but eventually I felt like I settled. And the Lord began to bring clarity to something in my life, and I started to say something to Him, and it shocked me. And what came out of my mouth as I'm sitting in this tree was, I am so scared. I'm so scared. I am so scared. And even as the words were coming out of my mouth, I'm like having trouble processing, like, wait, why am I saying this? But as I felt like the Lord just kind of took some things through my mind to help me see the ways that I'm dealing with the fear in my life. And look, there's plenty of like big things to be afraid of. Like I've got 3 boys, and I want to see them grow up to be godly men and live fulfilling lives. And that is scary as a parent. I want to have a good marriage in the midst of trying to raise 3 crazy boys into godly men. And to maintain that is pretty scary. Like, we work for an organization that's been in Chattanooga for 50 years. And I'm like, I don't want to be the one that drives this thing into the ground. That's kind of scary. But what the Lord was showing me was it's the more day-to-day ways that I'm really afraid. And the way that He helped me see some of this is He took me back to a memory in high school. I wrestled in high school. It was one of my favorite sports. And my junior year, I got 6th in the state. And I was ranked 3rd my senior year. So I had a good chance to get into the finals, maybe even win a state championship. But I tore a couple ligaments in my ankle my senior year. I was out for like 6 to 8 weeks. And I came back right towards the end of the year. Well, wrestling, like, you've got to be in really good shape because it's only 6 minutes, but it's exhausting. And it's very strenuous. So I get into the state tournament, win the first round, go in the second round, and probably should beat this guy 9 out of 10 times. And we end up tied at the end of regulation, so we got to go into overtime. I'm like, great. I was out of shape for 6 minutes. Now I got to go for another minute, maybe more. And overtime, it's just first point wins. Okay, so I was a pretty simple wrestler. Like I pretty much took everybody down the same way. Okay, so it was a double leg. So I would go down and I'd grab both their legs. I'd pull this foot back and I'd step behind their foot, trip them, driving them down. But the motion would always take us out of bounds. So in wrestling, you've got a circle and you got to stay in bounds. So you think of it like NFL wide receiver. He goes to catch a football. He's got to drag both his feet. Same thing in wrestling. So usually, my highlight reel for my senior year, it's this over and over again. Oh, double leg, trip them, going out of bounds, drag my toes, 2 points. So that's what I'm going to do. Like, no doubt in my mind, but I'm really tired. And it was probably pitiful. I don't even know how I got to his legs, but I was on the ground and holding on. And I'm like, I got to get up. So with everything I had left, I'm standing up. I'm driving into him. I trip him. I'm going out of bounds. I drag my toes. He's down on his back, out of bounds. I see him take his headgear off. We're standing up. And the ref goes, nope, you're out of bounds, back in the center. And I'm going, what? No. I thought this guy was too old to be reffing at that point, and he's still going 16 years later. So, not that I have any bitterness about this. But, so we come back to the middle, and I'm spent. I'm so tired. And so I lock up with this guy, and I try a move that I've never tried in my wrestling career, not even in practice. It's called a lateral drop. It's a throw. So basically in this, you're going this way, and you're throwing them back and then turning at the last minute, putting them on their back. So I do this, but I just fall on my back. He gets 2 points. I lose. And then he loses the next match, knocks me out of the tournament. Now, if I were to put that video on the screen, you would probably watch it and go, oh, but you gave your all, like that was awesome, like you went for it, even though you were tired, like you were still trying. And I would have fooled you because I knew what I was doing in that moment. And basically, I was finding a way to give up without looking like I gave up. I was trying to do something. I was spent. I had nothing left to give in my mind. And so I knew I needed to quit. I wanted to quit, but I didn't want it to look like I quit. As I'm sitting in that magnolia tree, the Lord's showing me the different ways that I'm reliving my last wrestling match over and over again. And I'm finding ways to look like I'm giving great effort, but it's really just enough to soothe my own conscience and to look commendable. In areas of my life that the Lord's called me to give my all, and yet I'm holding back because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of what if I give my all and it's not enough? What if I can't do it? See, I had these makeshift hiding places. I would hide behind these halfway efforts. Now, I know I'm not alone in this. I know there's probably some of us in this room that you have ways that you manage your own fear. And the things that you're afraid of, you find ways to avoid those or to hide behind something so that you don't have to face the things that you're afraid of. And I know I'm not alone because I see it in the Scripture too. And I see it in Peter's life, specifically towards what I would call Peter's hardest 24 hours of his life, which are the Last Supper into the crucifixion the next day. So I just want to take you into into a little bit of these 24 hours of Peter's life and what took place afterwards. You got to remember, Peter's one of the 12 disciples, not just one of the 12, he's one of the 3 in the inner circle, Peter, James, and John. And he's walked with Jesus for 3 years, seen him do incredible things, been a part of ministry with him. He's been given leadership in ministry, and he's gone out and he's done some himself. Like, it's been a wild, wild 3-year ride. And they come to celebrate the Passover, and at this supper, Jesus gets down and he's washing the disciples' feet, and he comes to Peter. And what we're going to see in this night is just the tension continually building. And all these 3 years, there's just so much. I think about, like, there's really 4 main responses that people have to Jesus in the Gospels. If you read all the scenes, like, people respond 4 different ways. They are amazed. It says they're amazed or astonished. They are confused. They are terrified. And they are grateful. And we see Peter run through all of those throughout the Gospels. And here he is. Jesus comes to him to wash his feet. And he says, Lord, you shouldn't wash my feet. And Jesus says, Peter, if I don't wash you, you don't have any part with me. Oh, okay, well, then wash all of me. No, Peter, you just need your feet washed. And so, we see him, he's probably watching everybody else get washed, and he's like, why is this happening? Like, no, I'm going to do what's right. No, Jesus. And then Jesus corrects him, and then Peter overcorrects, and then needs to be corrected again. And then it's shortly after this that he finds out that one of the 12 is going to betray Jesus. Can you imagine hearing that and then being able to think about anything else that night? Is it me? It's like, surely not. Who is it? Who's going to betray Jesus? And then right after this, Jesus says, Peter, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. And he says, Lord, I'm ready to go to prison with you, even death. Okay, Peter. Tension's building. So then they go off to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus brings the 3, Peter, James, and John, a little bit farther, and he says, wait here and pray with me while I go off and pray. So Jesus goes off for an hour, and he comes back, and there's Peter sleeping. And Jesus wakes him up. Could you not stay awake for 1 hour and pray? The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And you think about this moment, like he's getting woken up, and the scriptures say that Jesus was in such agony, he was sweating drops of blood. Like, can you imagine waking up in the dark and seeing Jesus' face? Like, what is going on? Like, this is intense. And then here he is again. Jesus asked him to do something, and he couldn't do it. Tension's building. Next time Jesus wakes him up, here comes my betrayer. And Judas comes with the temple guards and some Roman soldiers, and they come to arrest Jesus. And they had talked about swords a little bit earlier in the night, and so Peter's like, I know what to do. Whips out his sword, probably going to cut off somebody's head, misses, nicks his ear. And Jesus says, Peter, put it away. Didn't we just talk about swords? I thought this is what we needed to do right now. No, Peter. So he's wrong again. And then Jesus, his teacher, his Messiah, is taken off, bound like a criminal. And all the disciples scatter, and he's following at a distance. And then when he goes into the high priest, the courtyard area, as soon as he comes in, hey, aren't you one of them? Aren't you one of Jesus' disciples? No, I don't know him. And then he finds him warming himself around a coal fire, and more people are asking him, wait a minute, aren't you one? No, I don't know him. Wait, no, your accent gives you away. You have to be one of the disciples. Didn't I see you in the garden? And he basically calls down a curse on himself. I don't know the man. And it says, while he's speaking, the rooster starts to crow, and he remembers what Jesus said. And in that moment, it says he locks eyes with Jesus. And he feels the weight of what he has just done. And this really rough day. And he runs out weeping bitterly. But that's not the end of this hard day for Peter. Because then he has to watch Jesus be beaten brutally, hung on a cross, breathe his last breath, be placed in a tomb, and see a large stone rolled in front of it. It's a hard day. Now, we don't have Peter's journal from that night, but maybe it could have sounded something like this. I am devastated. I can't believe what's happened in the last 24 hours. I was ready to die with Jesus, wasn't I? Why was I so afraid? How could I deny I even know him after all he's done for me and all he's let me be a part of with him? What I've done is shameful. And Jesus is dead? What is going on? How could this happen? He has to be the Christ, right? I don't even know what to think. I am completely devastated. I feel like I can't remember the things Jesus said. The last 3 years have been incredible. And now is it all coming to nothing? You hear it dripping with shame, doubt, confusion. What is going on? They expected Jesus to be this political Messiah who was going to come and overthrow the Roman government and set up his kingdom like here and now. You see James and John come with their mother to Jesus and say, when you come into your kingdom, I want one son to sit on your right, one son to sit on your left, because they thought it was soon. And now he's dead? This is the Saturday of the soul, right? This full, long period of time when Jesus is dead. All hope seems to be lost. There's a dark shadow over their hearts and soul. What is going on? But Sunday's coming. And then the resurrection happens, and Peter sees Jesus risen, like all doubt is erased in that moment. You were dead, now you're alive. Okay, I get it. But see, there's a period of 40 days where Jesus appeared to his disciples off and on, and at one point up to 500 people. And so there was one of those times he appeared to them on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And they had been fishing, and Peter comes in, and there Jesus has a coal fire waiting for him. And he's cooking breakfast. And he needs to have a conversation with Peter. And you might remember Pastor David sharing this, but that coal fire had to remind him of that moment when he denied Jesus for the third time. It had to remind him when he locked eyes with Jesus and he realized what he had done. So Jesus isn't just covering up his iniquity, making it look better. No, he's uncovering it, facing it so it can truly be covered. And so 3 times he asks Peter, Peter, do you love me? Because the 3 times that Peter had denied him. So he restores Peter to relationship. Now, granted, this isn't like this warm-hearted, encouraging moment for Peter, but he's restored to leadership. He knows that Jesus is still asking him to lead. Well, then Jesus, he gives the Great Commission. He ascends into heaven. And then he told them to wait in Jerusalem. And so where are they waiting? They're up in this room again, locked doors. They're still afraid. What's going to happen to us? What are the religious leaders going to do to us? Look what they just did to Jesus. Then the day of Pentecost comes. This is about 50 days from the crucifixion to Pentecost. And the Holy Spirit comes, and they are empowered and bold and courageous, walk out to the festival where there's people from all over that had come to Jerusalem to celebrate Pentecost. And Peter gives this famous sermon, and 3,000 people come to faith. And in that sermon, like when he says Jesus, he says, whom you crucified, whom you had killed. Like, he's not pulling any punches. Like, you were really scared, dude, and now you're like calling them out right there in front of everybody. It's a pretty drastic change. And then he goes, like, more things begin to happen. Like, there's a man that's healed that was lame, and like there's a huge commotion over this man's healing, and Peter gets brought in with some of the other disciples, and they're questioning him about it, and he says, look, let it be clear that it was by Jesus whom you killed. Again, he's calling him out. That's how this man was healed. And he's not afraid anymore. He's bold. And the religious leaders look at him and they go, these are uneducated common men. But they have obviously been with Jesus. In fact, it's almost like didn't we kill Jesus? It's like he's standing right here in front of us again. The Spirit of Jesus was in him. And they were warned, don't you talk about Jesus anymore. But they said, we must obey God rather than men. And they went about and they continued to tell people about Jesus, that he is the Messiah. And so they get brought in again. And this time they get beaten for what they've done. And they leave the council celebrating, praising God that they were counted worthy to suffer for the name of Christ. Now again, we don't have Peter's journal that night, and maybe it wouldn't be like this, but just maybe this is something he might have said. This is life. I vaguely remember the shadow of a man I was the night Jesus died. I was so scared then, but no more. The Spirit of Jesus has come upon me, and I never dreamed I would be so bold. All the doubts I had have been replaced with confident trust. Jesus truly is the Messiah, and he has done and is doing everything he said he would do. He was raised to life, he sent his Holy Spirit, and he is building his church. What an absolute joy to live life with him. He has overcome my shame. Do you see the transformation in this man over a period of 50 days? It wasn't overnight, but that's not very long either. In 50 days, the Lord took him from a place of shame and doubt and guilt and confusion, hopelessness, to a place of power and hope, comfort, boldness, purpose, and love. So there's hope for me. There's hope for you. That Jesus can deal with your fears. He can handle the shame. So for me, as I've had to begin facing my fears now that I'm more aware of it, because it's been coming at me from so many different ways. And I'm just taking that to the Lord. And when I say that, in the moments where I sense this, I'm doing it again. I just have to take some time and go, Lord, I'm afraid. I know I shouldn't be, but I'm in this place again and I'm scared. And I don't want to give all my effort. I want to keep doing what I want to stay in my makeshift hiding place instead of yours. Help me, Lord. Help me to be with you, abiding with you, walking with you in faith. And I'm just starting that journey with him of healing and growth. But I'm thankful for what he's done in my heart already. And you might be hearing this, going, I don't know. I don't think I'm really that fearful of a person. Well, let's take a look at something. I want you to think, maybe there's some evidence of fear in your life that you haven't really been clued into. I want to ask, are you living a life of faith? Are you taking bold steps of faith with God to grow closer with him? To be a part of building the church? Building his kingdom here on this earth? Seeing him do what Jesus said, greater things that we would do than what he did when he was here. That doesn't even compute. Are you dreaming with God about what he might do in your own heart and through your life? Or does your Christian walk look a little more tame, a little more reserved, it's a little bit pulled back, a little bit safer, and stepping out boldly? I look at what Jesus has done, and I just I just can't believe that Jesus died so that we could live safe. Like, the goal of life is not to arrive safely at death, but to walk in the fullness of life with Christ, in boldness. So I want you to, are you living the Saturday Christian life, where it just seems like it's just been one death after another? This dark Saturday of the soul, where there's doubt, confusion, shame, and guilt, hopelessness. Let me encourage you, Sunday is coming. And it's the pattern of the Christian life. That there's some journeys down into death, that's for sure. But there is resurrection on the other side. Every time for the believer. Every time. But maybe you've experienced some resurrection in your life, but you don't feel restored to really walk powerfully with God, to walk in closeness with Him, to be a part of building His church. Would you let Him restore you? To wipe away the shame, to truly cover your sin. That it doesn't matter what you've done. He uses broken people to accomplish His work. And maybe you've been restored, but you're not living the life of power of Pentecost. The Holy Spirit has come. The Spirit of Jesus lives inside of His people. And we can live either under the influence of our flesh, or we can live under the influence of the Holy Spirit, day after day. I want you to take a minute and just close your eyes. And I just want to give you just a minute, just a process with the Lord. And I want you to ask Him, Lord, am I living a life of fear or faith? Take a minute and talk to the Lord yourself. You can open your eyes. Maybe that felt like a long minute of silence, or maybe it felt like, I need some more time. And you got to remember, like, sometimes it takes a while for things to settle, for you to really see clearly what's going on in your own heart. But the world needs the gospel. They need to hear it, and they need to experience it. And if we're living a life of fear, paralyzed, not taking steps boldly, no matter what the cost may be, they're not going to get to see it. They're not going to get to hear it. They're not going to get to experience it. You aren't going to get to experience it. Boy, the life of faith instead of a life of fear, there's a dramatic difference, right? You see the results of both in Peter's life. But what could he be encouraging you with today? What is he pushing you towards? Take some time with him this week. Let your soul settle a little bit. Lord, how am I dealing with fear in my life? Is it paralyzing me, or am I living a life of faith? I encourage you to talk with some of your close friends, some of the others at the church, and just begin some communication. Man, like, what if the Lord would use my life to spark something in others? What if me taking some bold steps of faith, stepping out of my fear, out of my comfort zone, with the Lord as my hiding place, where He will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs and shouts of deliverance? What could He do in my life and through me? Let me pray.